game changers.
Our lead story tonight is from Ukraine. The war is intensifying, Russia is going all guns blazing, and Ukraine is losing ground. American intel says Russia is launching a big offensive, and they're throwing everything into it: soldiers, tanks, even fighter jets. The focus is on eastern Ukraine. The fighting has intensified in Bakhmut. It's a small Ukrainian city ravaged by the war. It is at the center of a fierce battle now. Russia wants to capture Bakhmut. Yesterday, Ukraine's forces, in fact, blew up a bridge there. They're trying to stop the Russian advance.
According to my friends who serve in Bakhmut, the situation is such that Russian troops can advance for one day. Then Ukrainian soldiers knock them out of these positions. There is no such thing as the enemy being able to gain a hold and dig in new positions. Our soldiers do not allow them to gain a hold in Bakhmut.
That was a Ukrainian soldier on the front lines. Both militaries have been fighting here since May last year. They've suffered heavy casualties. Now Russia is making a fresh but more aggressive push. But why Bakhmut? Why does Russia want to capture this small city of all places? Experts have a theory. Bakhmut could be a stepping stone. Once it is captured, Russia could make a bigger push in the east. One that targets Donetsk and Luhansk. Together, these two regions make up the Donbas. This is the main battlefield of the war. Last year, Russia declared that it had captured Donbas. Moscow staked a claim on 4 regions: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. The announcement was made by Vladimir Putin himself. In 2014, he had taken Crimea from Ukraine. But this time it was different. Even though Russia claimed these territories, it wasn't really in control of them. Russian troops were present and in charge in just a few areas. Towards the end of 2022, Russia controlled just 18% of Ukraine. And Kiev kept pushing back on the battlefield. But today, the Ukrainian forces are struggling. Zelensky himself admits this is a tough situation.
And of course, today, as every day, I was in touch with our military, our commanders. I had a few meetings. The situation on the front line, especially in Donetsk and Luhansk regions, remains very difficult. The battles are literally for every foot of Ukrainian land.
Despite support from the West, Ukraine is struggling and the NATO is worried. NATO Chief Stoltenberg says Ukraine is using up its ammunition quickly and the demand is high. The West may find it difficult, in fact, to keep up the supply. I have some numbers. Russia has been firing 20,000 artillery shells a day. 20,000 every day. What about Ukraine? 6,000 to 7,000 shells. This is the average. And it's high. Ukraine may run out of supplies. Its main ally, the US, is already making appeals.
Ukraine has urgent requirements to help it meet this crucial moment in the course of the war. And President Zelensky underscored Ukraine's need for more equipment at our last meeting in Ramstein.
Ukraine has urgent requirements, says Lloyd Austin. Stoltenberg says Western defense industries are under strain. This is a war of attrition. It is now all about bigger guns and more ammunition. And there's no end to Ukraine's demands. First the tanks, then fighter jets, now ammunition. The list continues to grow. Moscow is sending reinforcements too. Reports say Russia is amassing aircraft close to the Ukraine border. These are fixed-wing and rotary aircraft, basically fighter jets and choppers. They've been moved close to Ukraine's borders. Will Russia deploy its air power soon? Is an air attack now imminent? It's hard to say, but Russia seems to be preparing for one, and it's getting support from Belarus. Let me show you some pictures. These are Belarusian troops. They're training in Brest. It's a border city in Belarus. This training ground is just 4 kilometers away from Poland and about 50 kilometers from Ukraine. These troops are preparing for combat. They're practicing driving, parachuting, and combat scenes. But why are Belarusian troops getting combat ready? Do they plan to enter Ukraine? President Alexander Lukashenko is an ally of the Kremlin. He's made major concessions to Russia in the past. His country has been used by Russian troops as a launch pad. Is Lukashenko preparing for the next step? Will he be sending his troops into Ukraine? The soldiers say they're ready.
We are ready for any task, however difficult, if we have to defend our beloved Belarus. We will not give our beloved away. It is ours, our beloved, our only one.
Either way, the battle in Ukraine will intensify. What is the thinking in Moscow then? It sees NATO's growing involvement as a clear threat. Yesterday, the Kremlin sent out this message to the West.
Слушайте, ну, во-первых, НАТО — это враждебная нам организация.
First of all, NATO is an organization that is hostile to us, and that proves this hostility every day. It is trying its best to make its involvement in the conflict around Ukraine as clear as possible. That's the first thing. Of course, this demands certain precautionary steps to be taken.
And it's not just the battle on the ground. The information war between Russia and the West is also intensifying. Here's the latest against Russia. A Yale University study. This study makes some disturbing claims. It says Russia is running a re-education camp for Ukrainian children. At least 6,000 children are said to be in these camps. The study says they're from Russian-occupied regions in Ukraine like Donbass and Crimea. And what's the purpose of these camps? Political re-education. According to the study, the children are apparently being trained in Russian values. The US says these children were separated from their families.
In many cases, Russia purported to temporarily evacuate children in Ukraine under the guise of a free summer camp, only to later refuse to return the children and to cut off all contact with their families. Such actions obviously will have serious long-term implications on these children's development. The network of facilities which these children are sent is vast, spanning from Russia-occupied Crimea, across Russia itself, from the Black Sea region to its far east.
Russia has challenged these claims. The Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. released a statement. It says these kids are orphans. I have that statement with me, and this is what it says. We do our best to keep underage people in families, and in cases of absence or deaths of parents and relatives, to transfer orphans under guardianship. We've not been able to verify either version, but we can say for sure that these children are collateral damage, and in the days and weeks ahead, there will be more like them. The fighting is intensifying as the war comes close to its first anniversary. There's a serious risk of this conflict spilling over. As Ukraine fights to regain lost territory, it is engaged on another front. This one is with its allies. It's the fighter jet front. Ukraine wants them, the West isn't giving them. Why are fighter jets such a big deal? Can they really change the course of this war? Why is the West reluctant, and why hasn't Russia used its jets yet? Tonight, we'll try to answer all these questions, starting with Ukraine's Spain. It faces regular missile attacks from Russia. Its air defense system is holding up so far, but it cannot take down all Russian missiles. Western fighter jets can change that. They can improve Ukraine's ability to defend itself. Part 2 of the story. Russia isn't using its fighter jets yet. Well, they did in the initial days of the war and suffered significant setbacks. But that could change now. Russia is readying its jets. What happens if they enter Ukrainian airspace? So Ukraine is worried. It wants to be able to defend itself. Plus, the Russian Air Force is a formidable adversary. Western intelligence says the same. It says Russia still has, and I'm quoting, Russia still has a pretty significant air force. And it's amassing aircraft close to Ukraine. And that's not all. Russia has also mobilized 300,000 troops. It is set to be launching a fresh offensive, which is why Ukraine wants fighter jets to launch offensive operations, to take on Russia's air force, to target Russian troop concentrations. This could change the course of the war, but Ukraine's allies are not playing ball. You may ask why, and we'll tell you it's complicated. Sending fighter jets is not as easy as it sounds. They're not like German helmets or electric batteries. They're fighter jets. Sending them would be crossing a stern Russian red line. It would be an escalation by the West. A lot of politics and a lot of countries are involved. But Zelensky is not giving up. Last week, in the middle of the war, he toured Europe. He gave speeches and lobbied for jets, yet returned empty-handed. Some leaders, like Rishi Sunak, made feeble commitments. Others just said no. Ukraine is desperate. It is calling the jets wings of freedom. It wants the F-16 fighter jets from the US. Now, the US is Ukraine's biggest ally at the moment. Biden has put his money where his mouth is, $50 billion and counting, battle tanks, aid, military and political support. He's given all of it, but no fighter jets. Biden has refused the request. The US says Ukraine is not ready to operate such fighter jets, and that is true. Ukrainian pilots would require at least 6 months of training before they can fly the F-16s. And the training, in fact, could stretch for years. This is a problem not just with the F-16s, but almost every Western fighter jet. Also, sending F-16s would be unprecedented. Washington will be risking direct conflict with Moscow. It could land NATO in a direct fight with Russia. And this is a red line that Joe Biden does not want to cross. What about the UK? Well, they're exploring possibilities. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has reportedly instructed his defense secretary to see what can be done. Ukraine wants the Typhoon fighter jets. Again, easier said than done. The Typhoon jets are made by the four-country Eurofighter consortium. So the UK will first need an approval from the three other countries involved, Italy, Spain and Germany. And that will take a while if it happens at all. And then we have Germany, always skeptical about sending weapons to Ukraine. It relented on the issue of tanks, but jets may be too much to ask for. Chancellor Olaf Scholz has said a firm no. In fact, he went further and complained about Western countries. Then there's France. President Emmanuel Macron gave Ukraine a reality check. He said that even if Europe agrees to give jets, they won't be available anytime soon. And by the time they are, it could be too late. Ukraine's closest ally, Poland, is also unsure. President Duda has said that sending F-16s would be, quote-unquote, a very serious decision, one that was not easy to take. His words. Which brings us to Russia. Russia has a big air force, the third largest in the world, with more than 3,800 military aircraft. If fighter jets can be game changers, and Russia has so many of them, why isn't it using the jets? The fact is, Russia did use jets and lost them. At least 67 aircraft so far. Russia's air force has not delivered yet. It couldn't destroy Ukraine's air defense systems. Then the West sent support. It gave Ukraine air defense systems. The US, the UK, the Germans, all of them, they chipped in. America's Stinger missiles helped. Coupled with Ukraine's S-300 batteries, they made an effective air defense system. So Russia did not go full throttle with its air force, and Ukraine doesn't have the jets to mount a meaningful offensive. This is where the story stands. The West is being wise for a change by not adding fighter jets to the mix. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Today is all about weird and wonderful news stories. We're sure you know about skateboarding. But do you know about fingerboarding? A fingerboard is a scaled-down replica of a skateboard. Skaters ride it with their fingers. Fingerboarding pros gathered for an event in LA, and oddly enough, it looked fun. In other news, researchers have developed a shape-shifting robot that imitates turtles. In Italy, a carnival has marked its 150th anniversary. It had everything from gigantic gorillas to gas masks. And Native Americans across the US joined the Pow Wow Festival. It is a traditional gathering of American Indians where tribes reconnect. We're leaving you with these images. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, you got to get that. Are we all going?